How's it going, guys? Nathan from Nathan's DIY Garage, and today I'm going to tell you why I think the BMW E46 is the worst BMW ever made. So let's give a scenario. You're on Craigslist, you see E46 for 500 bucks. You see E46 for 300 bucks. Anything under $1,000 even if you find one you like for $3,000 and you want to buy it. Most people that buy these cars are younger kids, maybe you don't know how to work on stuff very good, and you find you just want a daily drive. Maybe you can't work on stuff very good, maybe a little bit, maybe not at all. You go pick this car up, the chances are, if you drive it home, I'll be honest with you, if it's over 20 miles and it hasn't been looked after and driven constantly and kept up, probably won't make it home. You're gonna have some kind of issue. There are literally hundreds of problems with these cars. That's why they're on there cheap. That's why everyone has no warranty. You buy one at a dealership, even if you pay $6 grand for it, they're not going to stand behind it. No way. So I'm going to show you right now why this is the worst BMW ever made. There's about 3 or 4 or 10 different reasons why I think that. So let's go ahead and get to it. So this E46, I did a video on this car here probably 6 months ago. And it's still here, and it's still being worked on constantly. As you can see, the wheels off of it. We're doing CV axles in it. We're playing the game right now. We have 2 axles. They're not the right size for that. Auto parts store doesn't know what to even order, what even takes what. That's a minor problem. You could easily remedy this. This is not a common problem. Let me show you a terminal problem. This is under the back of the car. This is the rear subframe. As you can see, right there is a big crack. And if you really get up there and really look, if I could show you, it's cracked on that side. And you can see the whole thing is actually pulling out of the floor of the car. So that's one terminal problem, and that problem is so terminal that that'll send 99% of these to the junkyard. So here's the problem with that. Everyone that's a stick has that problem. Everyone. If it's a pre-2001, they're a little bit worse. Even up to 05, they still have it. It's just not as common. Now, it's more common on a manual car than automatic. That is the number one reason why you see E46s in the junkyard that aren't wrecked. So another one is the sunroof drains like to come off. And that pretty much is every one of these. They'll come off up here in the corner, and I'll run water on the floorboard, and you'll come out in the morning and there'll be 3 inches of water on the floorboard if it rained hard that night. That's another problem. They also have funky window regulators that like to break. They're a little bit of a pain. They have some really odd, shallow star bit screws in it. They're kind of difficult, easy to mess up if you don't know what you're doing. Under the hood, it's the same engine as the E39 these years. Same engine as the 6-cylinder X5s. The only problem with this is on the E46s, you don't have the room back here because the car is smaller. So, in order to change the starter, you have to take the whole intake off. If you know how to do it and you do it all the time, it's not that big of a deal. If you're somebody that's never done it, or you got to pay a shop to do that, I don't even know. That could send it to the junkyard too. Easily a job to take the intake, all the stuff off, and the shop's probably going to break half the hoses. You go to the CCV valve. To pay a shop to do all that and for a starter, you're probably $700-800 easily $700 or $800. And these are cars that sell for $2,500 to $3,500. So that's a pretty big hit. Next is the coolant bottle. The coolant bottle on these snaps in a frame down on the bottom that's made onto, it's like a part of the fan shroud that bolts to the radiator. That's not hard to get off. You can pull it off in 30 seconds. Getting that seat back on there, you got to have some pretty good experience. You got to know what you're doing. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes they go right on. 99.9% of the time, You got to take that out. You got to struggle with it. A lot of shops will snap that lower part off that holds the tank. You have to buy a whole new one. That's another pretty big problem. Another terminal issue is the transmission. In a manual transmission with a clutch, the dual mass flywheel is very expensive to replace. A lot of these, once they get over 100,000 miles on them, it's starting to chatter, starting to shudder. It'll get so bad where you have to replace it. That is also shared with the E39s these years, so that's not particularly or particular to a E46 only. So back to the room issue. If you drive this car long enough, no matter how careful you are going to eventually, it's going to overheat. No matter what you do, eventually you're going to spin a pulley, the thermostat's going to stick, the impeller on the water pump's going to break, a hard liner, the intake's going to snap off, and you're going to boil it over, and it's going to pull the threads out of the block or crack the head. Therefore, if you own one of these cars and you're putting heavy miles on it, start doing research. You're eventually going to have to pull that cylinder head off. That is a monumental job. In this car, you run into the room issue back in here to get that off. It's a tight fit. Be prepared for that. That's not guaranteed. That's an 80% chance that'll happen to you. The next thing is the cowl. This car is a little bit different cowl than the other cars. If everything is not perfect with the cowl, it likes to leak water and it likes to drip it down in the back two spark plug holes. That's probably one of the most common ones. These cars are getting old. The seals, and you get a lot of these in the seals. One of them's missing, one of them's got a tear in it. It's not bolted in right. That's super common. And another problem is, which you've probably seen the videos before if you watch my channel a lot, these are really bad about dry shaft carrier bearing and guibo bushings. There's a center support bearing that holds the shaft up, and it's about right there in the car. And that likes to go bad. It likes to shudder and thump on the bottom of the car. E39 also shares that, even though it seems E39 is not quite as bad about having that problem. Another common issue is the ABS module failing. You can see this one has, the key's just on, has the traction control light right there, has ABS, and that stuff will stay on. That's, if it hasn't been fixed, and your car has 150,000 miles on it, that's probably going to be having an issue. If you're fortunate enough to have the E46 that has the M56 engine, which this is M54. The M56 has a metal valve cover. That is the California emissions engine. Those are only a few years. If you have that, you have the luxury of having a fuel pump and a gas tank you cannot replace. Therefore, you need to get a whole gas tank. If it's a common car, a common problem, that's not hard to come across. The problem is, with these cars, they only made a few cars just the last couple of years with that engine, with that gas tank. If you have that problem, you're in bad trouble. So I've had several people call me about that already. They end up having to drill and put a pipe in the tank to siphon from the top, or drill it in the bottom and run an aftermarket fuel pump on the car. And the gas tank problem will also total one of these out. To pay a shop to do that, to pull the dry shaft, to pull the exhaust, to pull all the heat shields, and to pull the tank down, you're in the thousands of dollars easily. So in conclusion, that's why I think the BMW E46 is the worst BMW to buy, especially for a beginner that's not used to working on these cars. If you're just starting out, you're much better off with the E36. They're just as cheap, maybe even more plentiful at this point. Or if you want something that rides smoother and nicer and is bigger, at E39. So that's all for today's video, guys. Just thought I'd make this real quick. I get so many questions on this topic. 16-year-olds asking me almost on a daily basis what I think about E46s. They're shopping around, they have a little money, and I just have to tell them, don't even buy it. It's gonna just totally wreck you. You won't be able to daily it. It's gonna need a lot of work, no matter how much you're paying for it. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.